Jack Halberd vanished without a trace 22 years ago, leaving his wife, Linda, and a small Ohio town haunted by unanswered questions. But when the FBI matched DNA from a discarded coffee cup to a cold missing persons case, everything changed, revealing a shocking secret buried beneath the surface, and a truth darker than anyone could have imagined. Jack Halberd was the kind of man who never caused a rip. In the quiet town of Millfield, Ohio, he was known simply as Jack from the plant. He worked the same shift at the local plastics factory for over 15 years, rarely took days off, and always clocked in on time. People described him as dependable, soft-spoken, and steady. Not particularly outgoing, but kind. He waved to neighbors, paid his bills on time, and mowed his lawn every Saturday morning like clockwork. To anyone who knew him, even casually, Jack didn't seem like the type of person to just vanish, but that's exactly what he did. On March 14, 2003, Jack failed to show up for his 6 a.m. shift. At first, his supervisor thought he might be sick, maybe his car had broken down. But after multiple unanswered calls and no reply from his emergency contacts, someone from the factory drove to his house. Jack's car was in the driveway. The porch light was still on. A newspaper rested at the edge of the walkway, soggy from last night's rain. Nothing looked out of place until they rang the doorbell, and no one answered. Police were called later that afternoon. Officers entered the home with a spare key provided by Jack's wife, Linda. Inside, everything appeared normal. There were no signs of a struggle. The living room was tidy, the dishes were clean, and Jack's work uniform was laid out neatly on the bed. His wallet and keys were still on the counter next to a packed lunch in a paper bag. One cup of coffee had been poured but left untouched. Nothing was missing, except Jack. Linda told police she hadn't seen him since the night before. They had dinner together, she said. And then he went to bed early. When she woke up, he was already gone. She assumed he'd left for work. Her demeanor was calm, even cooperative. She gave the officers permission to search the house, provided statements, and answered all their questions. But as the hours turned into days, and then weeks, with no sign of Jack, the case began to grow stranger. No one had seen him leave the house. No cab companies reported any pickups near their address. His bank accounts remained untouched. His cell phone was found powered off and charging in the kitchen. There was no activity, digital or physical, after the night of March 13th. As rumors began to spread through town, people speculated. Had Jack walked away from his life? Was he having an affair? Had he suffered a breakdown? Others were less charitable, whispering that maybe he'd gotten involved with the wrong people, or that someone had made him disappear. The police interviewed friends, co-workers, and neighbors. Everyone said the same thing. Jack was boring, predictable, and reliable. He loved quiet things, books, crossword puzzles, old rock records. He wasn't the type to run away. Still, without any evidence of foul play, the investigation slowly lost momentum. By summer, it was classified as a missing persons case. By fall, most people had stopped asking about him. But one detail stuck with a few detectives. Buried in their notes, Jack's wallet, keys, and phone were untouched. He hadn't walked away. Something, or someone, had made him stay behind. They just had no proof. Not yet. After Jack Halberd disappeared, the quiet town of Millfield struggled to make sense of what had happened. The Halberd house, once full of life and routine, became a place wrapped in silence and suspicion. Linda, Jack's wife, remained in the home they had shared for years. She didn't move away or sell the property immediately, which surprised many. Instead, she stayed, tending the garden and keeping up appearances as if nothing had changed. She told neighbors and friends that Jack had left on his own, that he was probably trying to escape something in his past. She said she hoped he would return one day, but she never pressed the police for answers or made public pleas. Linda's calm demeanor confused those who had known the couple. Jack had been quiet but deeply loyal, and no one thought he would leave Linda without a word. Yet she didn't seem broken or desperate. Instead, she moved through the town with a strange kind of peace, as though the uncertainty no longer weighed on her. People whispered that she must know more than she was saying, but no one had any proof. The police had checked her alibis repeatedly, and nothing suspicious was ever uncovered. In the months after Jack vanished, Linda arranged a small memorial service. It wasn't a funeral, because no body had been found, but it was her way of creating closure for herself and anyone else who needed it. A few friends and neighbors came, sharing memories and expressing sympathy. Linda spoke softly, thanking everyone for their support, but never mentioning any doubt about Jack's disappearance. She said she believed he would return someday, but the tone of her voice suggested otherwise. The community, desperate for answers, began to question whether Jack's disappearance was really as simple as Linda made it seem. There were rumors about their marriage, hushed conversations about arguments overheard at family gatherings, and stories about Linda's secretive behavior. Some said she had seemed distant in the months leading up to Jack's disappearance. Others recalled seeing her talking with strangers late at night, or driving out of town alone. Despite these suspicions, there was never any official evidence linking Linda to Jack's disappearance. No calls from threatening strangers, no signs of a break-in, and no witnesses to a fight. The police were left with a mystery that made no sense. Jack was not a man to run, and there was no proof he had been forced to leave. For Linda, life went on. She found a job as a real estate agent, selling houses in Millfield and surrounding towns. She volunteered at the local community center, attended church every Sunday, and maintained her friendships with a quiet grace. To outsiders, she was the picture of resilience, a woman who had endured loss and moved forward with dignity. But behind closed doors, some wondered what secrets she kept locked away. The Halberd house remained in Linda's name, unchanged except for the creeping dust of time. Over the years, neighbors noticed fewer visitors, and less activity. The house became a symbol of a mystery that never disappeared. Some people crossed to the other side of the street rather than pass by it. Others stared from a distance, trying to imagine what had happened inside. As the years passed, the town's interest in the case faded. New stories, new disappearances, and new crimes replaced the old headlines. But for a few, the question remained: what really happened to Jack Halberd? Was his disappearance an accident, a runaway, or something dark? And if someone knew the truth, why had they kept it hidden for so long? Linda's role in the story stayed buried beneath polite conversation and polite smiles. No one expected the truth would ever come out. But as time showed, some secrets don't stay hidden forever, and sometimes the people closest to us are the ones we should watch most carefully. In 2025, advances in forensic technology began to transform cold cases across the country. The FBI launched a new program aimed at using cutting-edge DNA analysis, combined with genealogy databases, to solve crimes that had gone unsolved for years. This initiative was designed to re-examine evidence from old investigations, often working with discarded items that contained DNA from people of interest or potential suspects. What made this program different was the ability to connect DNA not just to suspects, but to family members, using the vast pools of genetic data voluntarily shared by millions through ancestry and health websites. One of the unexpected breakthroughs came from a seemingly insignificant object, a used coffee cup, found at a public library in Columbus, Ohio. The cup was collected as part of a low-level investigation into a minor theft. The library staff had reported that someone had left behind personal belongings after hours, including the cup, which had a clear lipstick mark on the rim. For routine procedure, the FBI sent the cup to their lab to extract any usable DNA that might help in ongoing cases. What they found was more than they expected. The DNA belonged to a woman whose profile was entered into a genealogy database as part of her own ancestry research. The lab technicians ran the DNA through the FBI's extensive cold case database, searching for any match. That's when something unusual appeared, a link to a name that hadn't come up in any recent cases. The name was Jack Halberd. Jack had been missing for more than 2 decades, and his case had long gone cold. At first, investigators thought it was a coincidence. The DNA on the coffee cup wasn't Jack's, but it seemed related to someone in his family. The system flagged a close familial connection, one that suggested parentage or sibling ties, but Jack's family was well documented, and he was not known to have any children. That made the DNA match puzzling. Curious and intrigued, the FBI expanded their search, pulling out files on Jack's disappearance. The missing person report, faded and forgotten, suddenly seemed relevant again. The timing, the location, and the nature of the DNA evidence began to paint a new picture. The coffee cup DNA was linked to someone with a direct biological connection to Jack. The woman who had left the cup was identified, and a deeper background check revealed she lived not far from where Jack had disappeared. Even more startling, the woman was living under a different name, and her age made it impossible for her to be a sibling or a parent. The implication was clear: she was Jack's daughter. This revelation stunned the FBI team. How had this gone unnoticed for so many years? Jack was believed to have no children, and Linda Halberd, his wife, had never mentioned a pregnancy or any child. Something about the case was missing, a hidden chapter that needed to be uncovered. With the new DNA lead, the FBI reopened the investigation. They focused on the Halberd property, the timeline of events surrounding Jack's disappearance, and the woman's background. Every piece of information became crucial. The DNA match from a simple coffee cup had shattered years of assumptions, and it was only the beginning of a dark story no one expected. What started as a routine evidence sweep had reopened a case that many thought was finished. The mysterious connection between a woman, a discarded coffee cup, and a missing man was about to reveal a secret buried far deeper than anyone could imagine. The FBI was now on the trail of a truth that had been hidden for 22 years, one that would expose a shocking betrayal and rewrite the history of Jack Halberd's disappearance forever. The moment the FBI saw the DNA connection to Jack Halberd's case, everything changed. They didn't just find a vague family link, they found a direct and undeniable connection. The genetic profile from the coffee cup matched closely with the DNA recovered from a known relative of Jack. The surprise was that this relative was not a cousin, sibling, or parent, but someone whose relationship was far closer and more personal. The woman who left the coffee cup was identified as the daughter of Jack Halberd. This was astonishing news. For over 20 years the community believed Jack had no children. His wife Linda had never spoken of any pregnancy, let alone a child born after Jack vanished. Yet here was DNA proof that Jack had fathered a daughter, someone who had lived her entire life without knowing her true father. This discovery raised more questions than answers. How had Linda hidden the existence of this child? Why had no one heard about a baby born to the Halberds after Jack disappeared? The daughter herself seemed to be unaware of her biological father's fate. She had grown up in a different household, under a different name, believing the man she knew as her father had died in a tragic accident years earlier. The FBI's next move was to locate Jack's remains. The Halberd house had been sold, but the land records showed that the original backyard had undergone landscaping just weeks after Jack's disappearance. The timing was suspicious, and investigators decided to search the property. Using ground-penetrating radar, they scanned beneath a concrete patio that had been poured shortly after Jack vanished. Beneath the slab, something solid appeared, an anomaly consistent with a buried body or large object. A controlled excavation followed, and what they found shocked even seasoned detectives: the skeletal remains of a man wrapped carefully in a tarp, hidden beneath the concrete. Dental records confirmed the remains were Jack Halberd. The cause of death was consistent with blunt force trauma to the head specifically, injuries that could have been caused by a heavy object, like a cast iron pan missing from the Halberd kitchen at the time of Jack's disappearance. Now the case moved from missing person to murder investigation. But the most disturbing part was yet to come. The DNA from the coffee cup belonged to the daughter, but her presence raised new suspicions. How was it possible that Linda had raised this child in secret? Why had she never told anyone? The investigation revealed that Linda had been living a double life. While she appeared composed and cooperative, she had concealed a dark truth. Linda had given birth to Jack's daughter months after he disappeared. That had fooled an entire town for over 2 decades. With the DNA evidence at the center of the case, the FBI was finally closing in on the truth. What began with a coffee cup in a library had turned into a shocking revelation. Jack Halberd's wife had killed him, buried him in the backyard, and hidden their daughter's true identity from the world. The small town of Millfield was about to uncover a secret it had never imagined. The discovery of Jack Halberd's remains beneath the concrete patio sent shockwaves through the FBI and reignited the entire investigation. For over 2 decades, the mystery had seemed unsolvable. A man vanished without a trace, leaving behind nothing but question. Now with a body finally found, the case took a grim and chilling turn. Forensic teams worked carefully, documenting every detail of the site as they removed the remains from their hiding place beneath the yard where Jack and Linda had once lived. The skeletal remains were examined by forensic pathologists, who confirmed the identity through dental records and unique bone features. It was undeniably Jack Halberd. What stunned investigators was the condition of the bone. Evidence showed Jack had suffered severe trauma to the back of his skull. The wound was consistent with a heavy blunt object. A cast iron pan, investigators later learned, had gone missing from the Halberd kitchen after Jack's disappearance. The bones told a story of sudden violence, not accident or natural causes. Jack hadn't died by chance or by running away, he had been murdered. The timing of the concrete being poured over the burial site, just weeks after Jack vanished, suggested someone had tried to hide the crime quickly and thoroughly. Detectives began to focus on the house, and the people who had lived there at the time, primarily Linda Halberd. Her calm and composed demeanor, which had puzzled neighbors for years, now seemed like a mask carefully crafted to hide a terrible secret. The presence of the body on her property was undeniable evidence that she had to know more than she had ever admitted. As investigators delved deeper into the case, they re-examined every detail from the time before and after Jack's disappearance. Linda's daily routine phone records, financial transactions and personal contacts came under scrutiny. They also looked into her past, searching for any signs of motive or a possible trigger for the murder. The forensic evidence also pointed to the likelihood that Linda had been the last person with Jack alive. No other DNA was found at the burial site, and there were no signs of forced entry or struggle outside the home. The crime scene suggested a domestic incident gone horribly wrong. With the discovery of Jack's remains, the FBI had more than enough to reopen the case as a homicide investigation. But beyond the physical evidence, the new DNA information about the daughter complicated the story further. Linda had concealed the birth of this child and raised her alone, never revealing the truth about Jack's fate. When authorities confronted Linda with the evidence, she maintained her innocence at first, but the weight of the facts, her husband's body buried beneath her former home, the daughter whose DNA matched both parents, and the timeline of events made her position untenable. As the investigation progressed, more disturbing details surfaced. Investigators learned that Linda had poured the concrete over the grave herself, ensuring the body would remain hidden beneath the house for decades. Her actions showed premeditation and a calculated effort to cover up the crime. The neighbors who had thought Linda's calmness strange were now reconsidering everything they had seen and heard over the years. The perfect facade she had maintained was crumbling. A woman who had once been seen as a grieving wife was now the prime suspect in a brutal murder case. Jack Halberd's body had been buried beneath the surface, but the truth about his death was now exposed. The combination of modern forensic science, new DNA technology, and relentless investigation had finally brought long-awaited answers to a case that haunted a small Ohio town for 22 years. The FBI's discovery marked a turning point. What followed would reveal not only how Jack died but why, and who had been living a lie all along. The quiet man who disappeared had been silenced forever, but justice was finally closing in. As the investigation deepened, the FBI's attention turned fully to Linda Halberd. For years she had lived as a widow, quietly raising the daughter who was now at the heart of this mystery. The DNA evidence proved the child was Jack's biological daughter, yet Linda had never revealed her existence, or spoken about Jack's fate beyond vague stories of disappearance. This silence suddenly took on a new and darker meaning. The FBI began piecing together Linda's life in the years following Jack's disappearance. They uncovered a pattern of secrecy and careful manipulation. She had changed phone numbers several times, moved to different towns under various aliases, and maintained a low profile. When neighbors were asked, many recalled seeing Linda drive late at night or suddenly disappear for days without explanation. Yet no one ever suspected her involvement in Jack's death. With modern technology, the investigators traced Linda's movements using old surveillance footage, cell tower pings, and financial transactions. They found that just days before Jack vanished, Linda had purchased a large quantity of concrete and rented equipment used to pour slabs. This purchase had gone unnoticed in the original investigation, but now stood out as suspicious. The FBI also examined the couple's personal life more closely. Interviews with friends and family painted a picture of a troubled marriage beneath the surface. While Jack was seen as dependable and steady, Linda was described as controlling and secretive. Some friends mentioned overhearing heated arguments, and witnessed Linda's growing resentment toward Jack's long hours and perceived emotional distance. Others spoke of strange behavior, like Linda's sudden disappearances, and unexplained injuries she claimed to have received from falling. These small details, once dismissed, now seemed to add up. The investigation uncovered evidence that Linda had financial troubles and stood to gain significantly from Jack's disappearance. She had recently taken out new insurance policies, and was set to inherit their home and save. The daughter, now a young woman, was brought in for questioning, not as a suspect, but as a key witness and victim. She had grown up with the belief that her father had died in a car accident. When she learned the truth from the FBI, the shock was overwhelming. For the first time, she began to understand the dark history of her family and the secrets her mother had hidden from her. The emotional weight of the case pressed heavily on the investigators. They had uncovered not only a murder, but a betrayal so profound it shattered a family. The daughter's testimony helped fill in gaps about Linda's behavior and the timeline leading to Jack's death. Further forensic analysis revealed traces of blood in the Halberd home that matched Jack's DNA, indicating the murder likely occurred inside the house. Combined with the evidence of the hastily poured concrete slab, the timeline became clearer. Linda had killed Jack, concealed his body beneath the patio, and fabricated a new life for herself and their daughter. With mounting evidence, the FBI obtained arrest warrants for Linda Halberd. The case that had haunted Millfield for 22 years was finally nearing resolution. What started as a disappearance had evolved into a chilling story of betrayal, murder, and decades of deception. The quiet town that once thought it knew the Halberd family was forced to confront a grim reality. The person they trusted the most had been hiding a deadly secret all along. The FBI's relentless pursuit of truth had finally brought justice for Jack Halberd and uncovered a darkness no one had imagined. When the FBI finally confronted Linda Halberd, the weight of evidence against her was overwhelming. After years of silence and carefully maintained facades, she was forced to face the reality that her secrets were unraveling. The arrest sent shockwaves through the small town of Millfield, where residents struggled to reconcile the quiet, composed woman they thought they knew with the cold-blooded murder suspect she had become. The interrogation process was intense. Linda remained composed at first, denying any involvement in Jack's disappearance and death. But as the FBI presented each piece of evidence, the DNA linked to their daughter, the forensic findings of Jack's body buried beneath her former home, the bloodstains in the house, and the records of her suspicious purchases and movements, her defenses began to crack. Without the ability to deny the physical proof, Linda eventually admitted to a shocking truth. The couple's marriage had been strained, filled with tension and unspoken resentments. On the night of Jack's disappearance, an argument had escalated into violence. In a moment of rage and desperation, Linda struck Jack with a heavy cast-iron pan. He fell, unconscious or dead, she wasn't sure. Panicked, she decided to hide his body rather than face the consequences. The concrete patio was poured soon after, sealing Jack's fate beneath their home. Linda admitted that she had buried him there to buy time, hoping the mystery would eventually fade. The child she bore after his death was kept secret, raised alone with a fabricated story about her father's supposed death in an accident. This lie had shielded the truth for more than 20 years. Despite the confession, Linda's motivations remained complex. She claimed years of emotional abuse and feeling trapped in a marriage that had grown cold. Yet the deliberate act of murder and the decades of deception revealed a calculated and chilling determination to erase Jack from existence. The FBI's investigation also uncovered how Linda had manipulated those around her. She had carefully crafted a narrative of grief and loss that gained sympathy and trust from friends, neighbors, and even law enforcement. The daughter had been kept in the dark, a pawn in a web of lies that kept the truth hidden. As news of the confession spread, the aftermath of Linda Halberd's conviction rippled far beyond the courtroom. Millfield, once a peaceful Ohio town, found itself grappling with the dark reality that had been hidden beneath its calm surface for over 2 decades. The story of Jack Halberd's murder and the decades-long deception shook the community's sense of safety and trust. People questioned how well they truly knew their neighbors, and wondered what other secrets might be buried in their quiet town. For the daughter, life after the trial was complicated. She struggled to reconcile the loving mother she had grown up with, and the woman who had taken her father's life and buried the truth for years. Counseling and support groups helped her navigate the intense emotions of betrayal, grief, and loss. Slowly, she began to rebuild her identity, learning more about Jack Halberd, the father she never truly knew, and piecing together her own story from fragments long hidden. The FBI's involvement in the case became a testament to the power of modern forensic science and relentless determination. What had started as a routine sweep of discarded DNA evidence had blossomed into a full-scale investigation that reopened a cold case many thought would never be solved. The coffee cup that sparked the breakthrough became a symbol of how small clues can unravel even the most tightly woven mysteries. Law enforcement agencies across the country took note of the case. It became a model for using genealogy databases to solve cold cases, inspiring new protocols and collaborations between federal investigators, local police, and private companies. The success of this approach offered hope to families of other missing persons and victims of unsolved crimes. Meanwhile, the Halberd house, once a family home and crime scene, stood empty. Over time, the property was sold, and the new owners eventually demolished the old house, erasing the physical reminder of the tragedy. For many in Millfield, the destruction of the house symbolized both an end and a chance for healing, a way to move forward while remembering the past. Community leaders and mental health professionals held town meetings and organized outreach programs to address the shock and grief many residents experienced. The events sparked conversations about domestic violence, the importance of speaking up about family struggles, and the need for vigilance when loved ones go missing. Millfield's story became a cautionary tale but also a rallying point for change. Journalists and documentarians covering the case highlighted the resilience of those affected and the complexities of justice after such a long time. The daughter's story in particular drew empathy and attention, reminding audiences that behind every crime is a family forever altered by loss and betrayal. Though Linda Halberd was behind bars, the emotional aftermath lingered. The scars left on the daughter and the community would take years to heal. The once simple disappearance of Jack Halberd had become a story of love, lies, and murder, one that no one in Millfield would ever forget. In the end, the case underscored an important truth: even when justice is delayed, it is never denied. Advances in science and the unwavering pursuit of truth can bring closure to the darkest mysteries, no matter how much time has passed. Jack Halberd's story was finally told, and while the pain remained, so did the hope that no secret could stay buried forever. Years after the trial and conviction of Linda Halberd, the story of Jack's disappearance and murder continued to resonate, not only in Millfield, but across the country. It became a symbol of how science and persistence can solve even the coldest of cases, changing the lives of everyone involved and reshaping the way law enforcement approaches unsolved mystery. The daughter, now older and more at peace with her past, chose to speak out publicly about her experience. She became an advocate for families affected by missing persons cases, and for those who had suffered the trauma of long-hidden crime. Her story, once buried under years of secrecy and lies, inspired many to never give up hope. She emphasized how vital advances in DNA technology had been in uncovering the truth about her father and holding her mother accountable. The FBI continued to highlight this case as a turning point in forensic genealogy, showcasing how discarded items and genetic databases could bring closure where traditional methods had failed. It led to increased funding and cooperation between agencies to develop better systems for tracking and solving cold cases. Jack Halberd's case became part of training programs, ensuring that future investigators would learn from its lessons. Meanwhile, Millfield slowly healed. The community remembered Jack not just as a victim, but as a man whose life was tragically cut short. Memorials and local events were held in his honor, helping the town confront its painful past and celebrate his memory. The tragedy also sparked important conversations about domestic violence, mental health, and the hidden struggles that can exist behind closed doors. Linda Halberd remained incarcerated, her life forever defined by the crime she committed. She refused most interviews and rarely spoke publicly, choosing instead to live quietly behind bars. Her story became a cautionary tale about how secrets and lies can destroy lives and how justice, even delayed, ultimately prevails. The Halberd daughter's journey was one of transformation. From a young girl, living under a web of deceit, she grew into a strong woman who reclaimed her narrative. She worked to educate others about the importance of speaking out in the power of modern science to uncover hidden truth. Her bravery gave hope to others trapped in the shadows of unsolved crimes. The small coffee cup found in a public library, once a forgotten piece of trash, had become the key to unlocking a mystery that haunted a community for more than 20 years. This simple object symbolized the power of persistence and the remarkable impact of technology in seeking justice. Jack Halberd's case taught many lessons about trust, betrayal, love, and the human cost of hidden violence. It showed that even the quietest towns can harbor dark secrets, and that sometimes the answers lie in the most unexpected places. Above all, it reminded people that the truth has a way of coming out, no matter how deeply it is buried. As new cold cases emerge every year, Jack's story remains a beacon of hope, proof that time is not always the enemy of justice. For those still searching for answers, the case of the man killed and buried beneath his own home offers a powerful message. No matter how long it takes, the past can be uncovered, the truth can be told, and justice can be served.